Hello, Councillor Walton. Can I just check that you can see and hear us in the Shield room, please?
Hello, Claire. Yes, I can see and hear you. Hello?
Thanks, Councillor Walton. We can hear you. If you end up speaking in the meeting, we will have to tweak you a bit louder in here. But as long as you can hear us for now, we'll get going.
That's fine. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Governance Committee. It's the 30th of July and it's 6 o'clock. Before we formally start tonight's meeting, we are going to have a minute's silence in light of yesterday's tragic events in Southport. So if we could all stand, that would be really appreciated. Thank you very much. Our thoughts are with all those affected in yesterday's tragic incident. So welcome everybody. We're here in the Civic. We've got Councillor Walton on the Teams. I am Councillor Wesley Roberts. I'm the Councillor for Buckshaw and Wordham, and I'm the Chair of tonight's committee, Chair of the Governance Committee. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. We're not expecting any fire alarms, so if one to sound, head for the nearest emergency exit. If we could all put our phones on silent, that would be great. That goes to me as well, as I receive an email with a notification. We are live on YouTube, and that can be found on the council's website, the link to that. If you are on Teams, if you could just remain on mute unless you're going to speak and then come off mute for that item. And we will start with introductions going around this way.
Good evening, my name is Tasneem Safdar. I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Hi, my name's Louise Mattinson. I'm the Director of Finance and Section 151 Officer.
Hello, Councillor Bretherton, Walton Liddell West.
Hello, Councillor Peter Gabbert, lost the call.
Good evening, I'm Dawn Heighton, I'm Head of Audit and Risk.
Good evening, I'm Gareth Winstanley, the External Audit Manager from Grant Thornton.
Good evening, Councillor Peter Pillinger for Buckshaw and Wordham Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Margaret Smith, New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening, Councillor David Shaw, representing Howick and Priory in Penwitham, substituting for Councillor Angela Turner.
Claire Gornall, Democratic Services Officer.
Deborah Ashton, I'm a councillor for Charnock Ward in Penwitham and I'm also Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you very much, everyone. We move on to agenda item 1, so I'll just pass up to Claire for apologies.
Apologies from Councillor Ange Tierney.
Thank you very much, and thanks for Councillor Shaw for filling in, and thanks for Gareth for joining us. It's the first time I've seen you at committee, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we are on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Has anybody got anything they would like to declare? Perfect. That takes us on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Members are advised that this item can be found starting on page 3 of the main agenda pack. Does anybody have any comments of the minutes of 23rd of May 2024? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's under the Grant Thornton audit plan. It was commented that Georgina Jones would provide updated information via email to members before the next committee regarding IT control environment. I can't remember seeing it. I wondered if it had come. And the one below it, which is that the management quality review of assets, the valuation was expected at the end of next week. It says, I just wonder if it came in. Thank you. Apart from that, I'm quite happy to propose them.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ashton did spot this yesterday when we had our chairs brief, and I think Louise has. You knew a bit about the asset one. I don't think we talked about the. You knew about the ICT one, but the second one, I'm not sure we spoke about. Do you want me to bring you in?
So on the internal control environment, I do know that it was included on the work that would be undertaken as part of this year's audit, and as part of this year's audit, which is currently taking place, there has been questions asked about the recommendations that were made in last year's audit, and asked for a follow-up to see whether we had implemented those recommendations, some of which were around cyber risk. And that included the appointment of a cyber risk officer, which Jason has been along earlier. Jason was appointed during the year to specifically tackle the areas of cyber risk. The cyber risk policy is under development and will be coming forward for approval. And there's been investment in some software to assist in, and again, I think that was touched on in the briefing about the software to try and filter and respond to any cyber attacks that may well come in. So that will be picked up, and I'm sure that will be picked up as part of the audit this year. There's more and more audit work that's undertaken in relation to IT controls than there has been. But I know Georgia hasn't provided anything as far as that update's concerned. I can respond also to the second point, which was in relation to the valuations. We have had all the valuations in. We did have a few problems, a bit of to and fro requests for information and both from ourselves and then from the valuers, but we did get all the valuations through, all the adjustments made to the accounts to include in the final accounts, which were published in draft on the website by the 30th of June and are now with the external audit, and we should hear back in due course as the progress on the audit and hopefully a clean opinion.
Thanks, Louise. Gareth, was there anything you wanted to add just while we're
not particularly, no, other than as Louise has mentioned, we've started the audit, and if anything comes out of that audit, we'll be reporting it back to this committee.
Perfect, thanks, Gareth. Councillor Smith, was that okay? Perfect, thank you very much. So I've got a proposal for the minutes. Is someone willing, Councillor Pillinger is willing to second them? And if we could just take a vote by show of hands if you're in agreement. Perfect, thank you, that's carried. Obviously, Councillor Shaw can't vote. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is going to be Gareth's big show, Governance Committee. Members are advised that an updated report has been published as a supplement. I'm sure Gareth will talk about what changed from the original one. So I invite Gareth to present.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps just a little bit of an introduction. As you quite rightly say, this is my first time being at the committee here. I've taken over from Matt Derrick as your audit manager here at South Ribble. Some of you may recall I was previously the audit manager about 5 or 6 years ago, so there's a few familiar faces that I recognise from those days. The report that you've got before you this evening is an updated report. An early one was sent out with just a slight typographical error. I wasn't intending necessarily to go through page by page, but just talk about the main points. So the report is our update report. On page 6, we just highlight, as Louise has just mentioned, that we've received the accounts and the audit of your financial statements is ongoing at the moment. Progress is going well, and we've got in train weekly feedback meetings with the finance team talk through any issues as they progress. But as I stand here or sit here at the moment, the audit is progressing well. In the report on page 8, we just highlight the timelines of our reports that we'll be sharing with you during the course of the year. As you'll know, prior to the discussion that we've just had, the audit report came to the audit plan came to the last meeting, and we're intending to bring our audit findings report, which will summarise the findings from the final accounts audit to the November meeting, along with our work we've done around value for money. The next few pages are primarily for information only. I just wanted to highlight one report on page 9, which highlights really the sort of national issue that members are probably aware about in terms of the backlog situation, where audits have been slow to be signed off for a variety of reasons. And this is a national issue, but you'll see there that in terms of the 22-23 audits, only 7% nationally were signed off by the end of May this year. But happy to report, in terms of a firm, Grant Thornton, were able to sign off 65% of our 2023 audits, and obviously South Ribble was one of those. But happy to take any questions about anything else within the report.
Great, thanks, Gareth. Was there any comments or questions from anyone on committee? Councillor Ashton, bring you in.
Keep forgetting that today. It was just, sorry, I can't find the relevant page, but I was just mindful of a few of the things that you mentioned on, the sort of ideas on a page kind of thing, with simply recycling and smart regeneration journey, those kinds of things. I'm just conscious that certainly the recycling one is potentially up in the air after the general election, because the chances are that they will carry on, but I think nobody knows. So presumably this is a living, breathing document as we go through the year.
Yes, absolutely. As I say, those reports that are highlighted are ones that have been produced nationally at a point in time, and things might well move on that.
Thanks very much. Councillor Brereton.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at I've got it down as page 12 in the main body, not the supplement. Under the value for money sections, it talks about a trust. Sufficient work to satisfy ourselves that the trust has made proper arrangements. I'm just wondering what the trust refers to. And
what's the title of the page? Sorry, Councillor Brereton.
It's progress at July 2024. It's on the Grant Thornton report, agenda item 4.
Perfect. Gareth got it.
Apologies, that is a technical area. With trust there, referring to our NHS bodies, that should be the council.
Okay, yeah, I was just a bit confused with that bit.
We do work on value for money, covering the 3 themes that I mentioned there. So that is applicable to local government. We do work around financial standing, around governance, on what we call the 3 E's, which is around improving efficiency, economy and effectiveness. But no, that does refer to local government.
Examples, yeah. And under the audit fees, it mentions Chorley Borough Council, but is there a similar fee for South Ribble?
There is, and that was the updated report. The version I think you're referring to there was the original report. In terms of the South Ribble fee, in the updated report, you'll see there that is down as £141,054.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Brereton. Was there anybody else that wanted to come in? No? Okay. The only comment I was going to make, maybe Dawn's already read it. I've not read it yet fully. The actual, there's a slide on the LJ Improvement Insurance Framework, but there's a full document beneath with links, and I was thinking maybe we could put it as a topic for our learning and development as the governance committee before a future meeting. I'm sure there's some interesting stuff you could share in there, Dawn. So we'll take an action for that. And then we will move on to, unless there's any comments from anyone off committee, I remembered, Taz. Then we'll move to agenda item 5, but we are just noting that report. So thank you, Gareth. And then we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the Treasury Management Annual Report 2023-24. Members are advised this item can be found starting on page 25 of the main agenda. And with that, I'd pass over to Louise.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to start by saying I just want to point out that Oliver Dent, who's with us today, is our new financial accountant, senior financial accountant, has prepared this report. So it was a big ask. Oliver's quite new in role, so I am presenting his work really. However, the purpose of the report is to present the outturn performance for Treasury Management for 23-24. And as noted at point 5 in the report, it covers key areas. So capital expenditure and financing, the borrowing need, which is different to actual borrowing taken, the Treasury position as at the 31st of March 2024, our investment performance over the course of the year, and analysis is provided at the back of the report on the global economic position and the financial markets, and that's provided to us by our financial advisors, Treasury Management Advisors, Link Asset Services. So capital expenditure during the year was just short of £17 million. That's for the financial year, and that is reported in the outturn capital monitoring report that went to Cabinet in July of this year. So that's already gone forward. So we spent just short of 17 million. Of that 17 million, about 11 million of it was funded by grants and some from our revenue reserves that is specifically earmarked for capital expenditure. And the other 6 is financed by borrowing or borrowing need, because we don't actually, for each individual scheme that we say we will fund by borrowing, we don't then go out and get a loan to pay for that. Borrowing need is also called a capital financing requirement, and that is referred to in the report. It's the measure of indebtedness of the council if it were to go out and take borrowing for all the schemes that it has approved and said, for these schemes, we will fund it by borrowing. But there is little point in borrowing when we have significant cash balances, so we do utilise our internal cash balances. And that's just arising from the day-to-day inflows. We get some funding up front, council tax, business rates, before we need to pay out salaries and precepts over to other authorities, for example. And a lot of the capital grants that we get, a lot of that money comes in and is paid up front to be utilised over the course of the year. So as a consequence of that, we're generally sat on larger cash balances. So, as the report refers to, the borrowing need or capital financing requirement is just short of £12 million, but we haven't taken any of that. The report also covers what's called the prudential indicators, and I can report over the course of the financial year we haven't breached any of those. It looks at the actual amounts of borrowing that have been taken to make sure that they don't exceed the capital financing requirement, or we haven't borrowed anything. We have an operational borrowing limit and an authorised borrowing limit, but as we haven't borrowed, we haven't impacted on any of those. So at the year end, we had just over £28 million on fixed term deposits with several different local authorities, all of which were on deposit for less than 1 year. They're for varying terms, and that is outlined in Appendix A. We had a further 1.7 million that's placed in call accounts with Barclays, Lloyds. So that's money that we can quickly get off deposit at any one time. And also we had 700,000 in money market funds, those that we use, BlackRock, Aberdeen Federated. interest rates held, as obviously is widely reported in the media, and the Bank of England rates started off the year at 4.25% and ended the year at 5.25. I think they increased in August during the year. We had expected them to fall, to start to reduce. That had been what had been widely publicised, that it towards the back end of the financial year, but they held those rates. But and as a consequence of that, because of the high cash balances that we were carrying, we generated significantly higher returns in 23-24 than we had done in 22-23, an average of about 5.79% over the course of the year. And that equated to £1.9 million worth of income earned for the council. And which is obviously a significant amount of money when you think the whole council budget is about 16 million. So to get nearly 2 million additional income on investments is a significant achievement. There's nothing further that I'd like to add, but I am happy to take any questions on the paper.
Thank you very much, Louise and Oliver, for preparing it. We look forward to you joining us next year to present it. So that's a good one to work to. Councillor Brereton.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I always enjoy reading things where there's figures involved. I noticed the rate of 5.79% was obviously quite a high rate. So I'm assuming that the average deposits were much higher than the closing. It mentions an average of 33 million, but it must have been, most of the interest must have been earned on higher amounts, because it's 5.79 is quite significant.
So the 5.7. The 5.79 is the average across all of the individual investments that we were taking out for that period of time. So as I said, we again within the report, we are governed as is included in the Treasury Management Strategy that goes to Finance Council, says with whom we can invest and for how long we can invest. And obviously the way that we do invest, we make sure that liquidity and security are of higher importance than the yield that's generated. Sometimes, you know, there is an opportunity to generate a bigger return. We do some due diligence, even on other local authorities, to see who is wanting to borrow the money, and we take a view on those.
Thank you. And I noticed the amount of capital expenditure that we actually spent was significantly less than what we thought we'd spend it on. Is there a particular reason why we didn't spend that cash? Is it going to be rolled over into the next year, or were the projects cancelled, or what was the purpose of not spending as much as we planned on spending?
So the areas, just trying to recall back to the capital monitoring report that was presented, the big areas were on Towndale, and to some extent on Jubilee Gardens. So it will be spent. It's just that it wasn't spent at that particular point in time. There was some slippage in the programme, just in relation to them, I think on the Towndale, it just did take some time to put the packages together, and that's been reported during the course of the year. So whilst the capital programme hasn't proceeded as quickly as was originally envisaged, it is a good news story in terms of the cash position, because that has enabled us to generate significant returns on our investments.
Yeah, and just final points. On point 14, the council's overall borrowing need. It's interesting to mention the bit about the finance leases. Such leases increase the CFR, but incorporate a borrowing facility. But when it refers to finance leases, what are they? What are the finance leases? Are they on particular assets, or do we know?
I haven't got the details of the actual leases that we would have. I don't know whether Oliver could chip in. No, not on this one. I can get some details on that. I think this is just like a generalisation around what the capital financing requirement includes. But yeah, I guess, going back in the older days of hire purchase, finance leases, it's that kind of, those kind of agreements that would be in place, that we would lease an asset as opposed to buying it outright, but lease it over a long period of time. And therefore, because we're not buying it, we're not incurring any borrowing on it, but it is taken into consideration. I don't want to give an answer and then it be wrong. So I'd rather come back to you on that one, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Okay, we'll take that last one away as an action. I'll bring in a few other councillors in a minute, just because you talk about slippage. So the money has been rolled over, but in terms of the actual projects and kind of finish times, they're still on track, I believe, for the is it Towndale and Jubilee Gardens? Is that right? Or definitely for Jubilee Gardens, I think.
That's my understanding. That's where we are at the moment. It's I think as far as kind of balance sheet is concerned, the 31st of March is a hard date. Things could finish like a week later, but as far as these accounts are concerned, we just report up to the financial year end. But anything like that, any schemes that are underway, any funding requirements that are to deliver those schemes, they will roll forward from one year to the next.
Thanks, Louise. Right, I'm going to work around this way, so I'll go with Councillor Ashton, then Councillor Shaw, then Councillor Smith, then Councillor Pillinger. But we'll start with Councillor Ashton.
Okay, thanks. It's really for my information as much as anything, Louise. So on page 31, table 7, the summary of term deposits by counterparty. As it's the first year I've worked my way through these reports, that didn't really understand what that meant. So a bit of an idiot's guide to what that means would be. So it's on page 31 and it's table 7.
So that's the maximum amount that the council has said can be invested with local authorities, £6 million. Right. So we wouldn't exceed that amount, and that's the sum that can be invested for over 365 days, but less than 2 years. And the maximum amount that can be invested with any single one authority is 6 million. So as if we had a short-term loan for, say, 6 million, we then couldn't do a loan for 2 years for another 6 million with that same council. And the idea behind it is that we are diversifying, spreading the risk. If there was an organisation to fall into financial difficulties, again with a local authority, we've seen Section 114 notice, and we've seen government give capitalisation directives to assist those councils in getting through it. So they are a safer place to invest money than maybe some organisations, but nonetheless we do try and make sure that we spread that risk around.
So is there a reason why we've chosen those councils, or are they just are they generally considered to be safe, or does that list change as time goes by?
So we don't hold a list as such. So when we have we monitor the cash flow on a daily basis, and we are updating it for new information that we get in, for income coming in, payments going out, and we're forecasting all the time. When we have an excess of money, then we will look to invest that. We would contact the broker, because we'll know a few days in advance of when this is going to happen, and say we have X pounds that we would like to invest. We're looking to invest it for a period of X number of months or weeks, whatever that may be. And then the broker will have a look at what other local authorities are looking to take money, and there is a matching up. The broker will come back and will say, I don't know, Newcastle City Council wants 5 million and it will pay you this rate. We'll have a look for a good rate, but for all of them that come through, we'll have a sift. There's lots of information through a Google that you can find out about a council. We have the SIP for Resilience Index. That's the report that I bring in May that gives you some indication of the financial sustainability of each council, and we have a look to make sure that they are of good financial standing in that. That's not to say the others aren't, and there's a huge risk attached, but if you're going to put your money somewhere, better to put it with the safest bet.
Thanks, Louise. Helpful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, and please forgive me for this because this is probably caffeine deficit at this time of day, but table 8, the totals don't match. So, they just don't add up the columns. So I then look at the next table, table 9. And what worries me about table 9, and I say it's probably a caffeine deficit, is that each of the average rates for the 5 items that make up the investment performance are smaller than the overall average rate. And I don't see how that works.
That's my proposal.
Sorry, if I take table 8 first, yes, the last column, it's got a 6 million in it, and we haven't actually, it should be 0 because we haven't got any lending that we have done for over 365 days. So that's just the total's been carried forward. So this is looking at on each. I can't give you a definitive answer.
So we're on to table 9 now, are we?
Yes, on table 9, sorry. I can't give you a definitive answer as to why that is not the case. For example, on the money market funds, that is saying on average it was 5%. On some it will have been more, on some it will be less, but I'll have to go back and come back to you with an answer on that one.
And sorry, it's just that if I've got a series of numbers and I try to make an average at the bottom and the average is bigger than any of the numbers in between, it just confused me.
Yeah, no, I'll come back to you on that point.
That's a really good point. Thanks, Councillor Shaw. That's why we're here, isn't it? Councillor Smith.
I'm on page 35 and the list of counterparts. Liverpool City Council is maturing tomorrow. The rest of them have all matured over a period of time from April to July. Have we been able to reinvest, and at what sort of level of interest are we now looking at over a period of time? And just as an aside, if you put money into, say, as a personal person, into a building society, the FSA look after you to a certain level. Is there any similar scheme that looks after local authorities that put money into other local authorities, or are we just vulnerable to the variances of their finances?
So do them in reverse order. No, there isn't a scheme as such with that, but local authorities and so fire authorities, police and crime commissioners, all of those authorities are lending on a regular basis between each other, and there isn't an amount that's agreed. It is all done in that way. Similarly, we put money with the Treasury, with the DMO. We don't have a limit on that. We're just hopeful that the Treasury is also a safe place to invest, one would hope. So in answer to the question, no, that's not there. Going back to the first point, yes, all of those maturity dates are adhered to, and as that money becomes available, some of it will come off deposit because we saw at a particular point in time that we would need it for a specific purpose. We then get more money in, and then we'll continuously invest in it. So it's a rolling program. I couldn't tell you precisely at this moment in time how much we've got invested. I mean, that's something we can pull off, but we are getting those kind of rates now. The rates haven't changed because we're only investing quite short term. Several months at a time. It's all less than 1 year. So the interest rates had been forecast to fall reasonably quickly, and that just hasn't happened. So they're very similar rates. But if it would help, I can provide you with a list of the counterparties kind of as of now, and the rates that we've got on those and the maturity dates. Yep.
Thanks, Louise. Councillor Pullinger.
The first is just a comment. When I come across terms like under borrowing, it sort of has a natural implication to me that that's wrong, that we ought to have been borrowing more. I did have to read around it to make sure I understood correctly that there is no weighting to that word. It's just when you get this terminology and you're new to it, it does sometimes confuse. But clearly, my assumption was the borrowing is what we should minimise. And so the term under borrowing does give an implication that you might, or could give an implication that you're not actually borrowing. I was also going to ask what Councillor Smith did about security of loans, because I know I can get up to 80,000 protection, and I assumed there wasn't any. What I wasn't clear about is when a council goes belly up or makes one of these section whatever notices, do we lose our investments? Were we invested in that council? That's the first question. And the second is just a comment again that I'm glad I don't see anything that you get it that I've read about in some of those councils invested in a hotel in Abu Dhabi or whatever, that we're actually very secure in the stuff that we're lending to.
You've just turned it off. It was on. It's all right.
I will get the hang of it by close. So in relation to there has been a host of councils that have issued the Section 114 notices over the course of the year. I think the first one to trip, well, I say over a year, it's now been ongoing for several years. The first one was Northamptonshire. We've had Croydon. There's been many of them. All of those councils will still be borrowing money from other authorities, from government, because in each case, a Section 114 notice basically is the notice that the Section 151 officer would issue to say that this council cannot balance its books in the financial year, either because there is more expenditure than income and there is insufficient reserves to cover it. So that's the position on that. Despite that, and them issuing those notices, what happens is the government will then put in a team. So this has happened at Birmingham, for example. It's happened in other councils, which the council has to pay for from the money that it hasn't got, but it has to pay for this team, and there is a turnaround team that will come in and work out how to get it back on financial track. And the government issued what's called capitalisation directives, where they permit the council to capitalise the deficit. So basically, it then gets parked and is kind of repaid over a number of years. So the government is kind of backing that council to do the turnaround and to repay any loss. So in that regard, no council has defaulted on those loans because they continue to exist, they continue to provide the services, and the government has been the backstop in that across the board. I think there was about 13 capitalisation directives that were issued around budget setting time.
So just to clarify for me, please, if we had money invested in that council when that section notice went out, would we get our money back on schedule, or would it be paid over a longer period or in some other way?
No, that money would come back to us as at the maturity date, because the Section 114 notice is an indication that the council is going to, if it continues as it is performing at present, then it will be unable to balance its books, and it has insufficient reserves to cover in. It's at that point the government stepped in, and so we would get our money back then. There's been no instances where that has happened, because that would be absolute front page news.
And lastly, can I just ask, you mentioned a broker. I'd assume there was some sort of market where a council put online or onto the market floor that it wanted to borrow a certain amount, and we could look at what was on the market floor. You're saying it goes through a broker. Are these interest rates after the broker has taken a cut? Presumably they do take a cut.
Yeah, these are the rates of interest that we are paid, and then the broker does get a fee for it. But I think that is paid by the authority that is doing the borrowing. Yeah, Yeah.
Thank you very much, Louise. Was there anybody else that had anything on committee? Okay. Is there anybody off committee? Councillor Smith, Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There's a few questions about security of funding, and I think that's always the case with large amounts of money to investing in people that you don't really know about. But in the Treasury management strategy, rather than this annual report, all councils are rated as in AA, AAA, and I think part of the management strategy, which I haven't seen for a while, which would normally come to this committee and council, the councils we are lending to, first of all, can you confirm that they are rated either AA or AAA or whatever, and we only invest in councils, if you like, that are AA or AAA rated? If I've got that right, I think that's my understanding from some years ago, I think.
I'm not. I've certainly never seen anything that individual councils have a rating. I've certainly never come across that one has been assigned to South Ribble or Chorley, or in my previous role at Blackburn with Darwin. So banks and building societies are for certain, but not across councils. Whether the local government as a whole is given a rating, I don't know. I've never seen or had anything communicated to that effect, but it definitely doesn't happen on a council by council basis.
Thanks, Louise. Was there anything else? No, nobody else. Okay, right. So I think there's a few bits there. With give Louise a hypothetical grilling, not just because people are committed, but the heat of the room as well. So thank you for that. I think there's a few bits to come back. Councillor Shaw's query on table 9. I think Councillor Smith's query about who the money's with now in terms of counterparts, because some of the things have matured. I think I'd be interested in about the fee of the broker as well. So it's just for info about that. And then I think maybe, Claire, if we could take an action to consider maybe some further training on the Treasury management process, that could be quite helpful for the committee. I think I'd find it quite helpful. Oh, yeah, all other councillors as well. But yeah, no, thank you for preparing that, Louise and Oliver. I'm not just reassured, but assured about the robustness of how we're managing our money. So it was very interesting to see. Thank you. And with that, we note the report. And then we move on to agenda item 6, which is Dawn's Time to Shine. So this can be found on page 43 of the main agenda, and I'll hand over to Dawn to present.
Thank you, Chair. So members will recall that when we did the review of the effectiveness of the committee in September 23, there were a number of actions that we needed to take and to fully comply with the SIPFA guidance. And one of those actions was an annual report setting out the work of the committee for the previous 12 months for presentation to full council. So it was agreed with the chair at that time that we would compile the report after the meetings in May, so it's a reflection of the full previous year, because the May meeting often wraps up lots of reports for all the previous year. So that's why we've set it out in the way it is. The report's attached to Appendix A, and as I say, sets out the work that's been completed over the year, sets out the membership, the meetings, what reports have been received by the committee, any training and development that's been undertaken. And what, again, we will do is we will look to assess the effectiveness of the committee later on in the year for presentation at the meeting in November. But if members are happy with the contents of the report, we're asking that it's recommended to be presented to full council.
Thanks, Dawn. And I think it's a really helpful report. Just before I bring others in setting out our journey as a governance committee. I think one of the things that me and Councillor Ashton were asking about, which we've not quite got an answer yet, but I think once we know the answer, we'll update the rest of the committee, is about, we agreed, I think it was in a September meeting, 2023, about getting independent members onto the committee. And I think we'd all agree that's, it was a good idea. And we're just, Chris is on holiday at the minute, so that's why we've got Taz, so it's our gain, but we're not too sure where we're up to in terms of the process of, have we found somebody? Dawn might know, so I'll pass over to Dawn before I say any more.
Yeah, it was always the intention to leave it till the new year, and then we were hit obviously with the elections and the government and the general election, so it was put on pause for a while. But we are picking that up now.
Perfect. So that's where we're at. And I think if there's I don't know if we're going to just find someone or have an external process. And if there is, yeah, so it's going to be an external process. So then we'll obviously look at how the committee's involved in that. Councillor Ashton.
It was just a question about where the pool is, how people are selected from the great and the good, or where do your choices come from?
It'll be externally advertised, and then there will be an interview process like any form of recruitment.
Thanks, Dawn. Was there any other comments or quick? Oh, Councillor Brereton. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not too sure if I missed it. I can't remember seeing it, but on page 55, point 8, does the committee publish an annual report in accordance with the 2022 guidance? And there's 3 ticks there that says no. And I'm just wondering, it says it is going to come to full council in May. I can't remember seeing it. Has that been published?
So, no, this is the annual report that we're doing now, and then we're asking you to take it to full council after you confirmed you're happy with it.
It's not
we agreed with the previous chair that we would wait till the May meeting had finished, and then we would present the annual report. So it was a slight change in the timing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I couldn't quite see that. Was Councillor Brereton referencing the survey that we did on where our gaps were? Yeah. So where the gaps, and then as part of that, it's been identified about this report, and then this is where we agreed. Right. Perfect. Okay. Thank you both. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a very good report. Thank you, Dawn. I think it takes us down the path that we want to go to make sure that it is documented how the committee operate and who's on the committee. And I'm particularly on page 48, as regards item 4, it says that it's an independent decision-making and scrutiny function, and that we can bring things and discuss them within this forum, either internally or externally. And I think that's a good thing, that it's actually documented that we can actually discuss things openly within this committee. Sometimes they're sensitive, but it is good that we have that we can actually discuss things and make sure that everybody feels confident that we're going forward with it. So thank you, Dawn.
Yeah, no, I think I'd echo Councillor Smith's comments. I think the more we can depoliticise this committee, the better it is for the organisation. And in terms of reassurance or assurance, I think at the last meeting, we talked about Grant Thornton, the external auditor, just coming in to see the committee. We did see if we could do it before this meeting, but Georgia wasn't here, and we didn't think it'd be fair for Gareth to do that session. So we're going to see if Georgia can do it before the next session, and we can all do that. Speak to Georgia and raise anything that we might want to instead of a training session. So thank you, Councillor Smith. Oh, maybe we should have had Gareth. I'm sure he'll be back. Was there any other comments on committee? Any off committee? Perfect. Okay, so that takes us to, I'm going to ask for a proposer. Thank you, Councillor Pillinger, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Smith. And then, if by a show of hands, if we could vote, if we're in approval. Thank you very much. That'll go through to full council. Well, with that brings the end of the meeting. I wish everyone a lovely summer holidays if you're off for the school holidays or wherever you're going, and we'll see you back in September. Thank you very much, all.